I try to, better myself every day and try to grow to be a better musician, a better person, and just be, more in control of the power. Because everybody else was scared of that.
Right.
Everybody, that's when Suge Knight was the monster, the boogeyman.
Right.
That's when he was the boogie.
While the world was focused on Diddy's courtroom drama in Brooklyn, federal agents were quietly circling another hip-hop legend behind the scenes. The FBI's Organized Crime Division has reportedly revived 2 major cases, one reaching back nearly 3 decades. The first links to the 1996 Las Vegas tragedy that took Shakur's life, and the second ties into Diddy's controversial private event network that led to a Mann Act conviction in 2025. Both trails, investigators now claim, point toward one name, Calvin Broadus, better known as Snoop Dogg. The timing alone has the whole industry shaken. For years, Snoop was seen as rap's calm peacemaker, the cool survivor who rose above the chaos of Death Row Records. But insiders from Washington hint that this case isn't about parties or image anymore. It's about what he might have known.
It's only happening in Long Beach right now as far as me doing something for the community, because that's where my heart lies at as far as straightening out my own neighborhood before I go elsewhere.
Federal sources say agents are digging through old pager data and hidden testimony, possibly linking Snoop to moments before both the Shakur and Biggie shootings. Officials haven't spoken publicly, but insiders whisper that pre-arrest briefings are already underway. If that's true, this could be the first time Snoop's name appears in an active federal case since his 1996 acquittal. Meanwhile, Diddy's conviction has unleashed a wave of witness cooperation. People who once swore they'd never talk are suddenly opening up. According to those close to the testimony, some of the same names tied to Diddy's social circle in the early 2000s are now showing up in Snoop's old tour crew.
Chaotic. It's hard to actually figure out what's what, but it's becoming clearer. It's becoming clearer and clearer.
That overlap caught the FBI's eye fast. Agents are reportedly tracking phone records and flight logs linking individuals across both networks. The theory? Explosive. They suspect Snoop might have known, or even quietly gained from, insider info traded within that circle long before the public knew anything. To see why that's so big, we've got to rewind to late 1996. Within 90 days of Shakur's tragedy, Snoop didn't just walk away from Death Row. He vanished from that world.
Snoop Dogg saying he owns Death Row is no different than me saying Tupac was alive because I had the unreleased Tupac music. It ain't no different, bro.
No more Crip colors, no more Suge Knight, no more talk about Shakur. Suddenly, he signed with Master P's No Limit label and flipped his image overnight. Back then, analysts called it smart business. But now, it looks more like Snoop was cleaning his tracks before anyone knew to look. Suge Knight, now running his prison podcast Collect Call, just poured gasoline on the rumors. Early in 2025, Suge told listeners he needed a real talk with Snoop about what went down in Las Vegas. And he wasn't chasing clout. Every word from a prison line gets monitored, so dropping that kind of statement on air shocked even his closest allies. According to 3 people tied to his legal team, Suge wasn't venting, he was bargaining. They claim he's been trading info with federal agents, possibly revealing details that could twist Snoop's sudden exit from Death Row into something way deeper than self-preservation. Meanwhile, former Outlaws member Napoleon has been reopening old wounds in new interviews. He insists Snoop's distance from Shakur wasn't creative, it was personal envy, and the stats tell the story.
I think that they don't want, if they was in any of those freak-off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public.
In early 1996, All Eyes on Me smashed over 9 million copies sold, while Snoop's Thy Dogfather pulled less than half. In Death Row's world, where profits meant power, that gap could turn respect into rivalry fast. Napoleon claims the jealousy didn't stop at emotions. It hit the money. Snoop was losing his spot as Death Row's top earner, while Suge poured millions into Shakur's projects. His power inside the label was fading fast, and when Shakur died, Snoop didn't mourn publicly. He moved on quick. But his own past words make the story even more tangled. Snoop once described a tense flight from New York to LA right after the East Coast-West Coast feud exploded. On that plane sat Shakur Suge and Snoop dead silent the whole way. Snoop admitted he had a blade tucked in his sleeve for protection. To fans, it sounded like paranoia, but to investigators, it looked like a sign he already knew something was coming.
And adapt to any environment and be a chameleon. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I got to go back to where I'm comfortable.
If Snoop truly feared his own camp, that means he sensed things had crossed the line long before the headlines hit. Years later, in the 2000s, Snoop said he fainted seeing Shakur in the hospital. Tubes everywhere, barely breathing. Afeni Shakur told him, "Get up, fix your face, and say goodbye like a man." It's a heartbreaking story, but it sparks new questions. If their bond ran that deep, why did Shug later accuse him of betrayal? And why has Snoop never spoken directly to shut that down?
As soon as I walked out of there, I went in the bathroom and I threw up. He just laid on the floor for like 30 minutes. His mama came in there.
That silence turned into part of the mystery as the federal investigation exploded again in 2025. Jaguar Wright, the outspoken singer who's been calling out the darker side of the industry for years, went on Pi Morgan's show and dropped a bomb no one saw coming. She claimed Snoop knew about both tragedies long before the public and was part of a quiet network surrounding Diddy. "Anyone who thinks he won't talk is crazy," she said, hinting that Diddy might have known way more about his own circle than people think. Her words hit social media like wildfire, reigniting debates that had been cold for decades. And when you line up Wright's claims with recent federal actions, the timing feels way too sharp to ignore. After Diddy's sentencing, prosecutors reportedly rechecked links between his private social gatherings and earlier West Coast operations. Insiders say several names from Diddy's guest lists in the early 2000s also show up in Death Row's old contact book seized years ago. It's still circumstantial, but enough for investigators to reopen locked files.
Why you get these type of individuals always kicking dirt on Pac name after they made their millions from doing these documentaries.
Meanwhile, Shug's prison podcast keeps blowing up, mainly because of his cryptic hints. In one recent episode, he talked about an unnamed West Coast legend who left the label like a man who already had his bags packed before the body hit the ground. The message was loud and clear. The timing of Snoop's No Limit deal, signed just weeks after Shug landed in prison, now looks way more strategic than people thought. Master P himself has said that Snoop came to him while Death Row was collapsing, desperate for an escape route. Moves that fast don't happen without a plan. By 1997, the transformation was complete. Snoop's image flipped from street vengeance to peace and spirituality. He dropped the aggressive tone that built his fame and told CNBC and VH1 in 2011 that Tha Dogfather was his rebirth, a clean break from the negativity Death Row had demanded. It sounded like growth, but critics saw it as a slick form of damage control. By then, the FBI's first Shakur case was already falling apart from lack of proof, and nearly everyone tied to it had gone silent. 2 decades later, Snoop stood tall as pop culture's chill elder statesman preaching peace and positivity. Yet behind that image, the contradictions kept piling up. When Shug went back to prison in the mid-2000s, Snoop shocked fans by calling him one of the best businessmen to ever come out of the West Coast. To some, that was forgiveness, but to others, it sounded like calculated diplomacy. The same man he once dissed on record was suddenly being praised in interviews. But Shug's version of their last meeting tells a whole different story. He said Snoop told him, "I could have saved you." Fans took it as a spiritual goodbye, but Shug's tone said otherwise. It hinted that Snoop might have known a lot more about that night in Vegas than he's ever let on. When Shug repeated that same phrase years later on his podcast, the FBI reportedly flagged it, because in a reopened homicide case, "I could have saved you" doesn't sound poetic. It sounds like withheld knowledge. Napoleon's comments have only added fuel to it all. Throughout 2024 and 2025, he's accused Snoop of rewriting history, downplaying Shakur's fury toward Bad Boy and painting himself as the calm, reasonable one. He told Art of Dialogue that Snoop's claim about disliking Hit 'Em Up wasn't about peace. It was about polishing his image. He's trying to take that shine from Shakur, Napoleon said. To outsiders, it might sound petty, but inside Death Row's brutal hierarchy, controlling your image meant survival. The one who stayed calm walked away clean. Now, with Diddy serving time in a facility reporters describe as hell on earth, every old connection of his is under a microscope. The Bureau has already issued subpoenas for digital records tied to artists who worked with Bad Boy Entertainment between 1994 and 2004. That era includes Snoop's own coast-to-coast reconciliations and his public appearances with Diddy. Back then, it looked like unity, but now it's being re-examined as possible closeness to something far darker. At the center of it all sits the one detail that reignited this entire storm: a mysterious pager message allegedly sent among insiders just minutes before word of Shakur's shooting spread. Several witnesses have whispered about it, but nobody's produced proof. The rumor says Snoop got that alert while still in the air heading back to LA. If the FBI confirms that timeline, it wouldn't just change the story of one tragic night in Vegas. It could reshape the whole understanding of how hip-hop's most explosive feud really ended. You can feel the pressure mounting. Every new Shug podcast clip seems time to drop another clue, and every federal move tied to Diddy's case uncovers one more connection between past rivalries and present-day alliances. What used to sound like wild industry gossip is starting to look like a well-built pattern of silence and control. And now one question is getting harder to ignore. Did Snoop Dogg rise from death row's ashes out of luck, or because he already knew exactly when the fire would start? As investigators chase that pager trail back to its source, the gap between coincidence and coordination is closing fast, pulling Snoop back toward a past he thought was gone and dragging the whole industry toward a reckoning no one can dodge. The Department of Justice doesn't reopen cold cases unless they've got real leverage. And by 2026, they finally do. 3 cooperating witnesses, each with a different motive. Suge Knight, whose sentence review hinges on what he hands over. Jaguar Wright, who's already named Snoop in a sworn statement. And a third mystery witness, their identity blacked out in the files. Sources say that third person was close enough to Shakur to know the real chain of secrets. Someone who was there when the lights went out in Vegas. Someone who once called both Suge and Snoop family. For federal prosecutors, that's not gossip. That's living evidence in motion. The first big clue points straight to Snoop's no-limit deal. On paper, Master P saved him from a crumbling label. But in reality, he may have given Snoop something even more powerful. Jurisdictional distance. No Limit's base was in New Orleans, far outside California's legal chaos still wrapped around death row. Master P's network was built smart. Everything flowed through distribution deals and corporate setups across Houston and Baton Rouge. For a man walking away from one of the most feared labels in rap history, that wasn't luck. That was protection dressed up as business. That wasn't just a new chapter for Snoop. It was a legal shield. The kind that made subpoenas tougher to serve and testimony harder to force. Some industry lawyers even call it the smartest escape plan in rap history. Looking back, it feels less like a career move and more like an early version of witness protection, just with a recording booth attached. The timeline says everything. Late 1996, Shakur's case still open. Early 1997, Snoop quietly signs with No Limit. By the end of that same year, Diddy's bad boy empire is blowing up nationwide, and by 1998, both major homicide investigations are suddenly cold. That's a clean line of silence connecting 3 cities. The FBI's analyst reportedly flagged that overlap in a 2025 briefing, noting how both Snoop and Diddy used rapid business expansion to build walls of plausible distance from the chaos that launched their fame. And yeah, that timing looks way too neat to ignore. Now the Mann Act, the same law that brought down Diddy, is creeping into this story too. Most people only think it covers illegal transport cases, but buried inside that statute is another piece almost nobody talks about: conspiracy to obstruct justice. That part applies to anyone who moves people, money, or information across state lines to help hide a federal crime. When federal agents start lining up the MAN Act language with Snoop's 1997 move, the story suddenly looks different. Shifting contracts, staff, and studio sessions from Los Angeles to Louisiana might not have been just a reinvention. It could have been a relocation of evidence. Alan Hughes, the filmmaker behind Dear Mama, once said, "Snoop dipped his light so Shakur could shine." Back then it sounded poetic, but when you view it through a legal lens, it feels calculated. Dipping his light might have really meant stepping out of the spotlight at the very moment investigators were looking hardest. He didn't dim for humility. He dimmed for deniability. While the FBI chased death row's gang ties, Snoop was already transforming into the chill entrepreneur, popping up in commercials, sealing family-friendly deals, and crafting a clean public image. Every time investigators circled back, his trail went cold under layers of contracts and sponsorships. But federal memory runs long. With Diddy's conviction still fresh and Suge talking again, agents now have access to voices that once stayed silent. Former death row security contractors are being pulled in for new interviews, and old distributors are suddenly getting hit with subpoenas for archived paperwork. Even the estate managers who handled royalties after 1996 are now being questioned about missing financial records. Each new subpoena drags Snoop's name closer to the center, not as a defendant yet, but as a person of interest whose timeline keeps brushing up against every major disappearance. And this time, Jaguar Wright's testimony isn't being brushed aside. For years, people called her unpredictable, but after Diddy's conviction confirmed parts of what she'd said long ago, investigators are finally listening. In her latest sworn account, she described private retreats in the early 2000s where Diddy, Snoop, and others supposedly met under the cover of charity events. She claimed those gatherings were really about settling accounts. The Bureau hasn't commented, but insiders say her timeline lines up with strange wire transfers between record labels that year. What once looked like coincidence now feels like a pattern building in plain sight. And then there's the third cooperating witness, the redacted one. They've reportedly turned over phone transcripts mentioning a pager message sent just before Shakur's shooting. Analysts traced the code sequence to a device model Snoop's death row crew once used. No one's officially tied it to him, but the phrasing in the leaked notes is chilling. Message confirmed, move complete. Whether that line is authentic or not, it's reignited every theory about premeditation, who knew and when they knew. Even Master P's camp can feel the tension rising now. Former No Limit executives are now keeping their distance, insisting their focus was music, not legal drama. But the optics tell another story. The label that rescued Snoop also shielded him from California investigators for years, giving him space to rebuild his fortune and fame, while nearly everyone else from death row either vanished or fell. Federal agents see that clearly. They're not just looking at crimes of action, but crimes of silence. Who stayed quiet? Who gained from that quiet? And now, the whispers are getting darker. Some retired investigators hint the Bureau isn't only asking whether Snoop knew about Shakur's fate, they're asking if he might have negotiated it. That spotless exit from death row, the instant signing with no limit, the total lack of retaliation from Shug's camp, it all feels too neat for a time ruled by chaos. Nobody walks off a battlefield without scars unless someone already promised their safety. Every month, another domino drops. Shug leaks another hint, Jaguar posts another cryptic claim, and prosecutors quietly add more files to the stack. Meanwhile, Snoop, usually quick to joke about anything, has gone completely silent. No denials, no explanations, just calm, carefully staged appearances. It's starting to feel like the quiet before a major storm, as that trail of pager logs, money wires, and missing voices gets shorter and louder. It doesn't look like innocence anymore. It looks like a deal, the kind of deal that keeps a man rich, free, and untouchable in plain sight. And if the whispers are true, that next indictment might already exist, just waiting for one signature to drop. So what happens when the FBI decides that Snoop's calm grin isn't confidence, but cover? When the man once seen as rap's symbol of peace suddenly becomes the focus of a federal conspiracy case? Could the entire industry survive a revelation like that? Or has it been living inside that truth the whole time? Let us know what you think down below. Do you believe this is all coincidence? Or has the game been rigged from the start? Drop a comment, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see this, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because this story, it's far from over. Stay alert, stay curious, and never forget, every legend hides a secret, and some secrets never sleep.